Sacred threads, a journey through the world's religions. Before temples rose or scriptures sang, before names like Yahweh, Buddha, or Allah echoed through history, humanity looked up at the stars and asked, "Why are we here?" Sacred Threads is a sweeping 15-part audio odyssey into the heart of our deepest yearnings, for meaning, for order, for the divine. From the silent meditations of Jain monks to the cosmic battles of Zoroastrian myth, from the fire of Sinai to the path beneath the Bodhi tree, this series traces the origins, stories, and living truths of the world's great religions, and the new ones still being born. You'll walk with prophets, philosophers, and skeptics. You'll witness the rise of sacred texts and hear the whispered doubts of those who walked away. And through it all, you'll discover not just what others believe, but what belief itself reveals about us. Whether you're faithful, skeptical, or just curious, this is more than a history of religions. It's a mirror, and the question it reflects is eternal. What do you worship when the world falls silent?
The dawn of religion.
Prologue. The dawn of the sacred, the origins of religion. Sound the faint heartbeat of a human drum, skin stretched over bone, resonant in a Paleolithic cave. In the flicker of torchlight, red ochre dances across the walls, tracing bison, spirals, and half-remembered dreams. A low chant rises, mingling with the hush of wind outside. You, listener, stand on the threshold of deep time, about to witness humanity's first steps toward the sacred. Welcome to the world's religions, a 15-episode odyssey. Our opening chapter travels back tens of thousands of years, long before temples or scriptures, to discover how and why religion itself emerged. We will walk among Neanderthals, peer through the eyes of shamans, and watch stone monuments climb against the sky, all to understand why human beings may be wired for transcendence. 1. Prehistoric spirituality, burial rites, animism, and early myth. 1.1. The evidence beneath the earth. The story begins underground, in the stillness of graves. Shanidar Cave, Iraqi Kurdistan, circa 60,000 BCE. Archaeologist Ralph Solecki brushes compacted sediment from the remains of a Neanderthal male, Shanidar IV, resting in what appears to be a deliberate burial pit. Pollen grains from yarrow and hyacinth cling to the soil, suggesting the body was strewn with flowers. Whether those blooms signified affection, medicinal ritual, or a gesture toward an afterlife, they reveal deliberate care beyond mere disposal. La Ferracière, France, Cima de los Huesos, Spain, Kafze, Israel. Across continents, hominin graves repeat the pattern. Flexed limbs, ochre staining, grave goods, lumps of red pigment, and pierced shells once worn as ornaments. These burials imply symbolic thinking, a recognition that death is more than biological cessation, that the departed require escort or protection. Religion's seed is visible here in the solemn orchestration of farewells. 1.2. Animism, a world alive. Step out of the cave and into the forest twilight of Pleistocene Europe. Every tree creaks with personality, the river hums with intention. For foragers, the line between organism and spirit blurs. Anthropologist E.B. Tylor coined the term animism in 1871. The belief that natural objects are animated by conscious life. But animism is less a doctrine than a lived gestalt. Its logic whispers, "Because I possess a mind, perhaps the oak does too. The thunder speaks. The bear negotiates." This worldview demands relationship, offerings, taboos, stories, knitting ecological knowledge into moral obligation. Long before codified theology, animism served as humanity's first environmental ethic. 1.3 Early myth in stone and pigment. In Europe's decorated caverns, Chauvet, Altamira, Lascaux, the oldest dated paintings, circa 37,000 BCE, pulse with narrative intent. Massive aurochs charge, half-human hybrids lurk, handprints stamp ownership on the cosmos. Some panels appear superimposed over millennia, as if each generation extended a sacred storyboard. We cannot read these myths verbatim, yet the composition suggests ritual performance. Flickering firelight animates galloping herds, drumbeats echo hoofbeats, storytellers embroider the hunt into cosmic drama. Myth grows out of episodic memory, stretched by imagination into patterns of meaning. 2. The evolutionary and psychological roots of belief. 2.1 Agency Everywhere, the HADD hypothesis. Why did the human brain evolve to sense invisible presences? Cognitive scientist Justin Barrett proposes the Hyperactive Agency Detection Device, HADD, a mental module tuned to infer agents, predators, rivals, from scant data. In a Paleolithic savanna, mistaking the wind for a lion cost little. Failing to detect the lion cost everything. Natural selection thus favored minds that erred on the side of agency. Religion, under this view, is a byproduct. Gods are the ultimate agents, explaining lightning, illness, destiny. Belief rides piggyback on a survival instinct. 2.2 Costly signaling and group cohesion. Evolutionary biologist Amot Zahavi argued that organisms broadcast costly signals, peacock's tails, deer antlers, to prove fitness. Humans likewise enact extravagant rites, fasting, tattooing, firewalking. Anthropologist Richard Sosis analyzed 19th-century American communes and found that groups demanding the most intense rituals survived longest. Shared hardship weeds out free riders, welding members into trusting coalitions. Thus, religion's fervor is not wasteful, it is adhesive. A tribe that sings together beneath the moon fights better come dawn. 2.3 Terror Management and the Promise of Meaning. Psychologists Jeff Greenberg, Sheldon Solomon, and Tom Pischinsky developed terror management theory, TMT. Human self-consciousness collides with the inevitability of death, generating paralyzing fear. Cultural worldviews, religious or secular, buffer that terror by granting symbolic immortality. I will live on in the clan's memory, in the god's keeping, in heaven's halls. Burial rites reaffirm community. Myths tame chaos. Afterlife hopes soothe grief. Religion is an existential technology. 3. Shamanism and the role of ecstatic experience. 3.1 The Shaman's Journey. Across Siberia, the word shaman, from saman, one who knows, describes a specialist who mediates human and spirit realms. Among the Evenki, the shaman drums until his soul ascends the world tree. In the Amazon, a Yachaj drinks ayahuasca to converse with forest beings. Despite divergent cultures, core elements recur. Call and crisis. A near-death illness or lightning strike marks the novice, surviving signals supernatural election. Ecstatic flight. Through drumming, dancing, fasting, or entheogens, consciousness departs the body. Neurologically, this state engages the temporal parietal junction, modulating self-other boundaries and evoking out-of-body sensations. Return with power. The shaman brings back healing chants, animal allies, or prophetic visions, social capital codified as sacred authority. 3.2 Neurochemistry of Vision. Modern fMRI studies reveal that ritual drumming at 4 to 7 Hz entrains theta rhythms, reducing activity in the default mode network, DMN, the seat of autobiographical ego. Psychedelic compounds, psilocybin, DMT, produce a similar DMN quieting, allowing sensory and limbic regions to crosstalk. The ensuing flood of imagery feels more real than real, interpreted as contact with spirits. 3.3 Shamanism's Cultural Toolkit. Beyond healing, shamans enforce taboos, anger the river spirit and the fish will vanish, arbitrate disputes and narrate cosmology. They are psychologists, physicians, and poets rolled into one. Crucially, they personalize the sacred, proof that anyone, with proper ordeal, may glimpse the invisible. 4. The transition to organized religion, temples, rituals, and gods. Dörtnokta, bir Göbekli Tepe, sanctuary before settlement. On a windswept ridge in southeastern Turkey, archaeologists in the 1990s uncovered Göbekli Tepe, a monumental complex of T-shaped limestone pillars ringed like stone sentinels, dating to circa 9,500 BCE, millennia before agriculture in the region. Carvings of foxes, boars, and scorpions leer from the pillars' flanks. The site upended assumptions. Hunter-gatherers, not yet sedentary farmers, marshaled hundreds of workers to carve and haul 20-ton megaliths. Some scholars argue that the desire to gather for ritual feasts drove nearby groups to cultivate cereal plots, inadvertently triggering the Neolithic revolution. In other words, religion may have built the first cities, not the other way around. 4.2. Çatalhöyük and the Household Shrine. At Çatalhöyük, c. 7,400 to 6,000 BCE in Anatolia, clusters of mud brick houses share party walls, prize fat-bottomed goddess figurines, and plaster bull horns on hearth altars. No freestanding temple exists. Instead, every dwelling doubles as sanctuary. Religion seeps into domestic space, blessing daily life. The bread you bake, the ancestor skull you bury beneath the floor. 4.3. Sumer, the rise of the priest-king. By 3200 BCE, in Mesopotamia's alluvial plains, irrigation demanded bureaucratic coordination. Temple complexes, such as Eridu and Uruk, ballooned into ziggurats, tiered mountains of mud brick, visible for miles. Here, theology intertwines with power. Gods own the land, priests steward it. Surplus grain becomes temple offering, then worker ration, then tax. Cuneiform tablets record allotments, prayers, and omens, writing itself births from liturgical accounting. Religion, once the province of itinerant shamans, now staffs full-time clergy who mediate between city and cosmos, legitimizing kings as divine regents. 4.4. The invention of the pantheon. Polytheism solves a social scaling problem. A small band needs a handful of spirits. A city of 50,000 requires a pantheon mirroring its division of labor. Anu oversees the heavens, Enki governs fresh water and craft, Inanna rules love and war. When city-states vie, their gods compete by proxy. Political conquest rebrands deities or merges them, yielding ever more intricate theologies. The divine bureaucracy reflects and rationalizes human hierarchy. 5. Why humans may be wired for transcendence. 5.1. The mystical brain. In 2001, neurologist Andrew Newberg injected radioactive tracers into Franciscan nuns at the climax of silent prayer. SPECT scans showed decreased activity in the posterior superior parietal lobe, which orients the self in space. As that region quiets, boundaries dissolve. The nuns report union with God. Similar neural signatures appear in Buddhist monks, Sufi dervishes, and seasoned meditators. Evolution rarely invents an organ for no reason. The capacity for self-transcendence may confer adaptive benefits, stress relief and healing. Deep relaxation lowers cortisol, boosting immune resilience. Creativity and problem-solving. Altered states forge novel associations, handy for tool invention and mythic storytelling. Group synchrony. Collective chanting entrains breathing and heart rate, fostering empathy. 5.2. Dopamine, reward, and revelation. Anthropologist R.I.M. Dunbar links endorphin release to synchronous rituals, laughter, dance, hymnody, that reinforce social bonds. The brain thus rewards religious participation with biochemical euphoria. Revelatory visions, meanwhile, surge with dopamine, the neurotransmitter of incentive salience, flagging the experience as profoundly important. Mystical insight feels authoritative, fortifying ethical resolve and worldview cohesion. 5.3 Cultural evolution of the sacred. Memory, once externalized in art and architecture, loops back to shape cognition. Children raised among towering cathedrals or minarets develop spatial and moral schemas colored by those structures. Over generations, religion co-evolves with language, law, and art, embedding itself in the cultural genome. Interlude and invitation to Part 2. The drums fade, but the echoes persist. You have traveled from flower-strewn Neanderthal graves through the trance of shamans to the shadow of the first ziggurats, tracing how burial, myth, and neurobiology conspired to awaken the sacred impulse. In Part 2, we will follow megalithic engineers erecting Stonehenge and the Egyptian pyramids, explore the codification of myth into canonical scripture, examine religious ethics as adaptive strategy, conclude with the larger question: does the dawn still illuminate our modern quests for meaning? Episode 1. The Dawn of the Sacred, the Origins of Religion. Narrator's recap. Flute and drum reprise the theme, quieter now, like breath before speech. In Part 1, we unearthed graves blooming with wildflowers, watched shamans arc across the night sky, and stood beneath the first Mesopotamian ziggurats. We glimpsed how burial, myth, and the neurological spark of transcendence sculpted the earlier sacred landscapes. Now the story widens. Stones rise into rings and pyramids. Oral sagas crystallize into scripture. Ethics fuse clan into civilization. And all the while, the same primal hunger to commune with something vaster than the fragile self beats within the human breast. 6. Megalithic visions, stones that touch the sky. 6.1 Stonehenge, cosmic clock and ancestral cathedral. Dawn, midsummer, Salisbury Plain. The horizon blushes, a chill mist skims knee-high grasses. Suddenly a shaft of sunlight cleaves the long corridor of trilithons and strikes the altar stone at the heart of Stonehenge. Spectators gasp and have for nearly 5 millennia. Construction phases, circa 3100 BCE minus 1600 BCE. Earthwork bank and ditch encircle a ceremonial precinct. Bluestones, 4-ton slabs from Wales, trundled 240 kilometers on wooden sledges and rafts, perhaps leveraged by seasonal pilgrimage. Sarsen Ring, sandstone uprights weighing up to 25 tons, lifted via earthen ramps, mortise and tenon joints, locking heaven to earth. Archaeologist Mike Parker Pearson argues Stonehenge formed a pair with nearby Durrington walls, one for the living, timber-bright and bustling, the other for the dead, fossilized in stone. Processions ferried the deceased along the Avon River from life to ancestral repose, orchestrating social memory on a cosmic scale. The monument's solar alignments signal a theology where time itself is sacred architecture. 6.2 Newgrange and the Light of Rebirth. Cross to Ireland's Boyne Valley, circa 3200 BCE. A grass-capped mound, Newgrange, hides a 19-meter passage lined with spiraled curbstones. For 364 days, the inner chamber lies in darkness, but on the winter solstice an amber blade of sun pierces the roof box, flooding the tomb for 17 breathless minutes. Here, death is not an ending. It is gestation in the belly of the Earth Mother, released when the sun is reborn. The engineering, precision to within half a degree, reveals sophisticated astronomy yoked to mythic imagery. Megalith builders did not merely observe the heavens, they choreographed a dialogue between sky clock and soul. 6.3 Pyramids of Egypt, stairways for the divine king. Farther south, along the Nile, limestone blocks glint beneath pitiless sun. By 2575 BCE, Pharaoh Khufu commands the Great Pyramid at Giza, 2.3 million stones, averaging 2.5 tons apiece, aligned within 3/60ths of a degree to true north. The causeway mirrors the Milky Way, The shafts in the king's chamber aim toward Orion and the circumpolar, imperishable stars. In Egyptian cosmology, these stars never set, apt symbol for royal immortality. But pyramid building is more than celestial vanity. Organizing 20,000 laborers for decades forges national unity and redistributes grain rations in the annual flood off-season. The monument becomes a socio-economic engine, theology poured in stone, powering the state. 7. From oral thunder to written flame. Myth becomes scripture. 7.1 The Scribes' Revolution. Around 3300 BCE in Sumer, clay tablets collect wedge-shaped cuneiform impressions tallying barley. But numbers soon sprout words, ledgers blur into hymns. Durable writing revolutionizes religion in 3 ways. Fixity, stories freeze, discouraging radical variation. Heresy is born. Portability, law and liturgy migrate across empires. Commentary, exegesis, the art of interpreting sacred text, turns meaning into a living dialogue. 7.2 Gilgamesh, hero, king, and existential questioner. The Epic of Gilgamesh, standard Akkadian version circa 1200 BCE, older Sumerian cause, chronicles a demigod king who, after losing his friend Enkidu, quests for immortality. He fails, learning the bittersweet human condition. Fill your belly with good things, for this too is the lot of man. The poem blends mythic grandeur with psychological candor, scripture as mirror to mortality. 7.3 Vedic chants, sound as creation. In the Indian subcontinent, the Arg Veda, oral composition circa 1500 to 1200 BCE, written later, comprises over 1,000 hymns. Reciters memorize exact pitch and accent because sound itself is sacral. In the beginning was Vak, speech, declare later Brahmana texts. To chant is to reenact cosmic dawn. Writing eventually codifies the verses, but careful ritual ensures the living mouth-to-ear lineage persists, a redundancy that protects sanctity. 7.4 Torah, covenant on parchment. Hebrew scribes compiling traditions between circa 1000 to 400 BCE weave law, myth, and genealogy into the Torah. Unique among ancient Near Eastern codes, it posits ethical monotheism. One God enfranchises a marginalized people, demanding justice because you were strangers in Egypt. Thus, literacy not only records but moralizes power. 7.5 Why Scripture Matters. Written canon allows disputation. Scholars debate variant readings, e.g., Masoretic points, Vedic recensions. Mission, text, can be copied and mailed, converting distant minds. Memory across ruin. Empires fall, libraries burn, but scrolls hidden in caves, Qumran, Nag Hammadi, resurrect lost voices centuries later. Scripture is mnemonic armor against the entropy of history. 8. Ethics as adaptive strategy, from blood feud to compassion. 8.1 Law Codes and Order. When Hammurabi erects his black diorite stele, circa 1750 BCE, he stakes divine legitimacy. Shamash, god of justice, dictates these laws. Eye for eye reciprocity deters vengeance spirals by delegating punishment to a central authority. Religion provides the cosmic gavel. 8.2 The Axial Age Hypothesis. Between 800 to 200 BCE in Greece, Israel, India, China, and Persia, sages interrogate inherited myth. Israel, prophets thunder social justice, let justice roll like waters. India, Upanishadic seers internalize sacrifice. Atman equals Brahman. China, Confucius teaches virtue over birthright. Laozi exalts effortless harmony. Greece, philosophers seek logos beneath capricious Olympus. Persia, Zarathustra, frames morality as cosmic choice. Truth, Asher, versus lie, Druj. German philosopher Karl Jaspers dubbed this the axial age, a pivot when transcendence turns ethical. Altruism enlarges in-groups, smoothing trade and diplomacy. 8.3 Compassion as social technology. Modern studies by political scientist Ara Norenzayan suggest belief in big gods who punish cheating boosts cooperation among strangers, enabling commerce beyond kinship. Ritual charity, zakat, tithing, dana, recirculates wealth, mitigating inequality. Over time, moralizing religions outcompete purely ritual ones, not because the gods are real or unreal, but because cooperation scales civilization. Ninth Festival, Calendar, and the Agricultural Heartbeat. 9.1 Sacred Time Loops. Agriculture entangles survival with seasons. Religions overlay ritual calendars onto planting harvest cycles. Akitu, Babylonian New Year Spring, dramatizes Marduk's victory over chaos. The king's reign is ritually renewed. Pesach, Passover, synchronizes Israelite liberation with barley harvest. Freedom is tasted in unleavened bread. Eleusinian mysteries, Greece, celebrate Demeter's grain grief and Persephone's return. Initiates receive hope for afterlife germination. By sacralizing the calendar, societies transform weather's anxiety into predictable ceremony, knitting communal identity. 9.2 Pilgrimage as social circulation. Paths worn by feet become arteries of culture. Olmec La Venta to Gulf Coast shrines, exchanging jade and myth. The Hajj to Mecca, uniting disparate tribes into a pan-Arab polity. Kumbh Mela along the Ganges, today the largest peaceful gathering on earth. Pilgrimage markets stimulate economies, stories and technologies cross-pollinate. Religion again acts as conveyor belt for globalization before the term existed. 10. The enduring dawn. Does it still illuminate us? 10.1. The secular turn and the spiritual marketplace. By the 19th century, the West witnesses disenchantment. Darwin undercuts Genesis chronology. Freud pathologizes belief. Marx brands religion opium. Yet faith refuses eclipse. New religious movements, Baha'i, Pentecostalism, New Age syncretisms proliferate. Neuroscientists track meditation's health benefits. Psychonauts revive shamanic sacraments with clinical rigor. The archaic pulse persists, remixed for post-industrial ears. 10.2 Technology as temple. Virtual reality churches, AI-written sutras, and live-streamed pilgrimages reshape ritual space. Where Göbekli's hunters traveled days to stand among pillars, a teenager now dons goggles and meets avatars in a Gothic cathedral coded in silicon. The instinct, gather before a symbol larger than self, adapts to optics fiber and algorithm. 10.3 Cosmic awe in the scientific age. Astronomer Carl Sagan called the cosmos a religion for intelligent atheists. Photos from the James Webb Space Telescope echo Newgrange's solstice shaft. Light travels 13 billion years to ignite human wonder. Physicist Brian Swimmer speaks of the universe story as modern mythos, marrying data to reverence. 10.4 Wiring for Transcendence Revisited. Recall Part 1's neural scans of prayer and trance. Contemporary research into psychedelics, psilocybin trials at Johns Hopkins, Imperial College, finds mystical-type experiences predict long-term reductions in depression and addiction. The therapeutic edge hints that evolution's gift, a brain flexible enough to dissolve ego, still confers survival value, now psycho-spiritual rather than hunter-gatherer. 10.5 Closing Invocation. Imagine again the Paleolithic drum. Its rhythm merges with your heartbeat. Across millennia, voices join. A Neanderthal mourner sprinkling flowers, an Egyptian priest reading star paths, a Vedic chanter tasting syllables of creation, a modern astronaut watching sunrise over Earth's curve. What binds them is not creed, but quest. The human story begins with questions the cosmos answers in silence, prompting us to sing, carve, build, and believe. Whether you anchor hope in scripture, science, or quiet contemplation, you inherit that dawn, the impulse to step beyond fear, to name the mystery and to walk together toward the light. Flute echoes fade, heartbeat slows, silence pregnant with possibility.